Thank you for joining me again, Brahmas fans. This is Troy Depew, your Texas Brahmas examiner. I have on the phone with me Mr. Chad Woollard. Mr. Woollard and I have been discussing the news that broke that the city of Fort Worth has asked the Brahmas to go back to the convention center for a weekend each year. For those of you that don't know, the Texas Brahmas started out as the Fort Worth Brahmas. Fort Worth had a long history of hockey in Cowtown, what with the Fort Worth Texans, the Fire, which my dad used to watch play the Dallas Blackhawks back in the day, the Wings, and of course, like I said, the Fort Worth Brahmas. I'd been around the Brahmas and been a fan since around 2000, but became a real fan during the 2004-2005 NHL lockout. Went to several games that year at the convention center and Will Rogers, taking my dad or my dad taking me. And I took my dad to another game this year at NYTEX, and he had a lot of fun there. After some ownership issues were resolved, the city of Fort Worth unceremoniously booted the Brahmas out of the convention centers and Will Rogers Center. That is the part that gets lost a lot of times, is the Fort Worth Brahmas did play a few games at Will Rogers as well. The reasons for the departure were, in my opinion, based partly, in fact, that that city of Fort Worth had signed a contract with a minor league basketball team, the Flyers, whose name I don't even care to know, as the team folded after only their second year of existence. Now, Mr. Woollard, I know that a lot of people are very excited about this, and it is being dubbed as a homecoming, but I'm kind of taking the stance of a scorned lover. They didn't want us there, so why should we want to go back?
It's just one of those things where I kind of think that they maybe regret the decision that they made, and they might have been misinformed on what was going to happen with the D-League basketball team, and I was sad to see them go. There's some great history down there, and it was a fun place to play. Going right downtown to play every night, and obviously we got a great facility at NYTEX, but it'll be fun going back there, and it'll be a little weird as well.
And I understand that there are a lot of old school fans that remember the Brahmas that started out in Fort Worth and the history. But do you think that they didn't follow the team North Richland Hills, where, by the way, the Brahmas have had more success than they did in the convention center?
It's hard to say. I remember back when I started. We used to get unbelievable crowds down there, and I think it was more of a case of where people just wanted somewhere to go downtown before they went out, or they went to dinner and then came and caught a hockey game or something like that. And it's definitely a different crowd at North Richland Hills. Obviously you're about a half an hour away from downtown, and it's a smaller facility, and the team's not out there as much because we don't play right downtown. But I'm sure we're going to have a nice blend of old and new fans in there.
That kind of brings me up to my next topic is the capacity. The capacity at the convention center is roughly 11,200, and NYTEX is 2,400. So the games have a potential to sell more seats. But if you sell 2,400 seats at NYTEX, that would be a sellout and will be allowed and give a huge home team advantage. Whereas if you sold the same amount of seats at the convention center, it would be kind of a smaller crowd and might be a little bit of a disadvantage.
Yeah, I distinctly remember playing down there, and obviously having, anytime you play a weekday game, it's tough to get a big crowd, and when you're in a bigger building, obviously it's not going to be as loud when you only have 2,000 or 3,000 people in there, rather than when you play in a facility that only holds 2 and change, and you might get 1,500 or 1,000 people on a Tuesday night, but it's going to seem like it's packed in there. And that's one thing that's good about playing at NYTEX. It'd be nice if we could sell it out every night. And I think now that we got things rolling here, and people see that we're winning, that we're going to be able to pack that place every night. But I'm assuming when we go down there for those 2 games that there's going to be a pretty good crowd in there, and it'll be loud enough for sure.
And as you said, you're one of the only men that played in both Fort Worth and North Richland Hills. And I got to ask, the ice has got to be quite a different animal between the two. I mean, the convention center has to change back and forth from ice to no ice, whereas North Richland Hills, the ice is there and welcome all the time. How bad or how good is the ice at the convention center?
It's funny because we always laughed about the ice there, because the ice was never that bad. The funny thing was that there was always crickets frozen into the ice. Anytime we had visiting teams come in for the first time, they'd be skating around looking at the ice because it looks like there's bugs all over the place, but it was just from, the crickets being frozen there from them taking the ice in and out all the time, and that was one of the funny quirks that I always like to tell people about the convention center.
It's pretty good. Oh, man. Now, do you fully want to return to Fort Worth, or do you just kind of want it to be like it is and just have a couple of games a year there and have your home still at NYTEX?
I think NYTEX is the perfect facility for the Brahmas, and I don't see them moving back downtown in the near future. I mean, they got a great thing going there with our team and the junior Brahmas and the whole NYTEX concept, and it's just a great partnership really with the two. And to have a facility that if we're only going to draw 2,500 people, you might as well only have a rink that seats 2,500 and have it be probably the loudest place to play in the league. Even considering some of these places have 5,000 fans, but you go into NYTEX and there's 2,500 people in there, you're not going to go anywhere that's louder than that. Not a chance.
Right. NYTEX does get very rocking, and looking at the wins and losses at home versus on the road, you guys have been much better this season at home than on the road. How much of that does play into the crowd?
A lot of it does. They're the sixth man out there, and I know I've come in here a few times, and it's a tough place to play. You're coming in as a visiting player to an arena that's smaller, and you think the ice is smaller, but it's not. It's a mental advantage that the Texas Brahmas have had since they started playing at NYTEX, and we try to take full advantage of it. And we know teams hate coming to play here, but we love playing here.
Now, the next topic I got here is the All Star Game is tomorrow. Do you think, in your opinion, that the Brahmas kind of got snubbed a little bit, being that they only have one representative going to the All Star Game, and that is, of course, the goalie Mark Guggenberger, who, by the stats, when they announced the All Star roster, Guggenberger was number 1. Yet they have him as a reserve and not the starter.
Right. I think first, I think it's great that Goog's got to go in the first place, and even just to be a reserve, you're still going to play as much as the starter plays. They all get to play a period, but I think if they would have held off a little bit, I think definitely that Phil Fox, another young great player that we have, probably would have got invited. I mean, he's been playing great the last month, and it would have been nice to see him go, because it's a good showcase for young players to go and show their skills off. And I think that over the last month, he definitely deserves to be there if we were going to have another player. But they only can take so many, obviously, and it's great that we got Goog there.
That brings up another point. The format of the All Star Game is kind of a very different one in the CHL than a lot of other sports and other leagues. Is most other leagues have it to where one division has their best players play against another division, whereas in the CHL it's the championship team. They host it, and it's their team versus the best in the rest of the league. So in effect, you actually have half as many roster spots as you would if you did it the normal way.
Right.
Is that something that you agree with, or is it it's something that they need to go back to the norm?
I think it's one of those things, to be honest, where it's a cost cutter, and it's a way to where they can still have the All Star Game, because it's expensive to put it on. I mean, you got to figure flying all these guys in and putting everybody up.
That's true.
And I mean, you're basically cutting your costs in half and still having the game. And I mean, it's definitely exciting to still have the All Star Game. And it's more of I like to see them almost go to a top prospect game instead of an All Star game.
That would be very nice.
I mean, there's no reason for a guy like me who's 32 years old needing to be going to an All Star game. I think if maybe they turned it into a case where it was rookies and second-year players, and maybe tried to get some scouts in there to get a look at these guys, I think it might be a great way to promote the league. They want to, it's called the CHL Developmental League, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe get a prospect team going instead of the All Star game.
That would be a very good idea. That would get guys like Phil Fox and again Guggenberger, who's a rookie in the CHL. That'd give them a better shot to get in there and, like you said, show off what they've got.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Woollard, it was a great talking to you yet again, and I really appreciate you taking the time with me, and I look forward to seeing you back on the ice January 15th.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.